Hey YouTube, it's Pastor Dwayne here. I know it's been a little while, but we're here to talk about some more claims that are being made by the King James Bible Research Council. Now, I'm not a YouTube channel that's out to be against all these guys, but there's just a couple things that they've been saying about the papyrus manuscripts that have kind of bothered me a little bit. And so we've got this video. We did the last one with Dr. Dan Hafley, and then there's one more that I want to do going back to that video where Dr. David Combs had suggested, P52, and then I think he mentioned another one in there. I think it was P31 or P34, can't remember. But I want to look at that and check, but that will be another video. But this one is even more egregious, I think. I like this... It's an example of a conclusion looking for evidence. That's really what this is. And so if you haven't guessed, I'm talking about their claim that P64, this is an early papyrus manuscript of the Gospel of Matthew. They claim that it's one, supports the Textus Receptus reading, and we'll go into that in a moment. And then two, that it's apostolic and goes back to the first century. Now, I don't know about you, but I think everybody in text critical circles, when they hear first century manuscript, right? The little, the spidey senses go off, right? Especially given, what happened with first century Mark and Dan Wallace and Dirk Obink and all of that stuff. I got a video on that. I don't think there's really any updates going on with first century Mark. I think last I heard is they haven't been able to find Dirk Obink, but he's apparently in a lot of trouble. Either way, that kind of leaves people a little leery with going first century, right? When you say you found a manuscript first century, nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to do it. I mean, you need a lot of oomph, a lot of evidence. A lot of spectacular evidence before I think a text critic will go first century with any discovery. But with that being said, the King James Bible Research found somebody who said first century, and they have latched onto it. So this is what we're going to be doing here. You see in front of me, I have the King James Bible Research Council website. And the reason why I loaded it here is because I wanted to show you they have a resources tab with some articles in it. And when I was doing my research for the Dan Hafley video, I just wanted to see what the King James Bible Research Council was all about. And I came across their website here, and an article caught my eye. And it was this one right here. More proof the traditional text is of apostolic origin, with a picture of a papyrus manuscript on there. So I was like, cool, let's go check it out. So I checked it out and I read it. Now, I didn't realize that this was an old article. Being that it's only like 5 or 6 articles down from the top makes me think either they believe it's really important or they just don't update this website very much. So I'm going to go with the former. I think they probably think this is really, really important. Anyway, so this is an article written by Dr. David Brown. Again, I don't know him personally. I'm sure he's a nice guy. But this article has left me a little bit wanting. In fact, I think David Brown was the gentleman that did the video on why the New King James Version is a terrible translation, why it's a bridge Bible or something like that. I did a live stream about it a couple weeks ago. A whole bunch of weeks ago, actually. So this is the same guy. So on September 12, 2017, he wrote an article about P64. And that's what we're going to take a look at. So before we get into it, let me say hello to everybody. We've got friendly neighborhood Jesus freak. RR, I'm glad you're here. Heaven Jones says, hi, not so busy this week. Same here. I was camping for 2 weeks. We went to the Pentecostal family camp on Manitoulin Island. I was ministering specifically in the direction of sound booth guy. So I was that guy at the back. And when the screeching happened, it was my fault. So much so that they put a pie in my face. Well, it wasn't for bad sound, it was for a fundraiser. But anyway, there's a picture of me online somewhere with a pie in my face. And to be honest, I was just in it for the whipped cream. Let's be real here. All right. So Heaven Jones, he's glad to be here. Well, I'm glad you're here too. I haven't talked to you in a little while. Hope things are going well. We've got RR, who's rearing to go, and Brother Maynard. I don't know yet if the King James Bible Research Council weighs as much as a duck. But I guess we'll find out. I'm just kidding. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at this article. We'll read through it together. It's not a very long article, and then there's a couple like things at the start that you kind of roll your eyes at. But the real point that I want to get to is near the end of the article. But it's good to get an idea of the whole article. So he asks, more proof for the traditional text let me try that again. More proof the traditional text is of apostolic origin. All right, so we're going to scroll down here. And let me make this bigger so y'all can follow along with me here. So compiled by Dr. David Brown, he says this, higher criticism of the Bible is a frontal assault upon God's words. Ever since the diabolical theory of dealing with God's words was introduced in Germany in the 18th century, the traditional text of the Bible, which underlies our King James Bible, has been under attack. Now, I sympathize with this position. Okay, I sympathize with the ideas here. Again, I'm not a fan of the modern critical methodologies, the CBGM, reasoned eclecticism, all that sort. So I mean, I can sympathize with that. Whether there's a satanic conspiracy or not, that would probably be another video. I think because. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. We'll just leave it at that. Anyway, so he continues on. Higher criticism treats the Bible as a text created by men. This is true. This is true. Okay, he's right here. My understanding of reasoned eclecticism and higher criticism is generally speaking that they're going to treat the text like any other text that's out there. And so transmissional probabilities, scribal habits, all these sorts of things, which would not be unique to the biblical texts. I think this is probably, in my opinion, where text criticism today, where reasoned eclecticism kind of falls. I don't want to say falls apart. Again, some of you are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. But I don't think you can necessarily push out, what's the term, preservation, and then just ignore the Holy Spirit, and I know you won't say you're ignoring the Holy Spirit. I understand your position, but there's this kind of like hands-off approach. Yeah, I know, Heaven, you're going to disagree. There's this kind of hands-off approach when it comes to theology and the text, and I don't think we can entirely remove our theology from the work of textual criticism. So I'm just going to say that again. Maybe this would be another video to kind of flesh that idea out a little further. I have some other things to go along with that, but Heaven's in there. He's disagreeing with me, and that's fine. But he'll like the rest of this. So he says their presupposition is that the Bible is a conglomeration of works by unknown authors. Again, now they're broad brushing, right? And editors, which is assembled and modified at the author's desires. I think they've been misspelled there. Again, they're broad brushing. Everybody who is working in textual criticism, some of them are unbelievers, some of them are not. I don't think this is a fair assessment. All right, they assert that the Bible has not been carefully preserved, and therefore the Bible cannot be entirely authoritative. Again, the difference here is a question of what carefully preserved means. Carefully preserved to the King James Version onlyist means it's word for word identical. Punctuates, in some cases, punctuation by punctuation the same. But carefully preserved to a text critic is essentially close enough. And you could flesh that out. We could flesh that out. But this is defined differently between. In fact, I would define carefully preserved differently than the King James Bible Research Council would. But this is not a discussion surrounding how we define that. But these are all loaded phrases. And he goes, and therefore the Bible cannot be entirely authoritative. In particular, they reject the texts that underlie the King James Version of the Bible. Interesting that they use texts plural there. And that's interesting to me. They're using plural texts. Anyway, so claiming that those texts are of much later date, an editorial recension or a revision of the earlier true text. Now, again, an editorial recension or a revision of the earlier true text, nobody believes that anymore. Like, you got to stop with that. Nobody believes that anymore. There might be one or two out there, but for the most part, Westcott and Hort's recension theory is dead in the water, and it's not going anywhere. So this is where it's like, well, if you're doing proper research, you would understand that the recension theory, the Lucianic recension of the 4th century, that's just, it's not a thing anymore. Now, where I would go with that is I would say that put text criticism behind about 150, 160 years. But yeah, no, no text critic today, as far as I understand, holds to this editorial recension theory of the Byzantine text. Okay, so yeah, this is just one of those beating a dead horse things, like or a straw man. You go back maybe 50 years, this would have been true, but today it's not. So they promoted that lie that there were no early manuscripts from the traditional text, the so-called. They promoted that lie that there was no early manuscripts from the traditional texts, the so-called Alexandrian and Western text. So again, this is where I would challenge this statement here. If you read Harry Sturz, he's pretty clear that there are a number of Byzantine text readings amongst the earlier manuscripts. So again, this is something that modern reasoned eclectics, they know this, they're aware of this. They don't say that anymore. In fact, if you look at the ECM now, there's the Gospel of Mark, when it came out, rendered 36 places where they went from a Alexandrian reading to a Byzantine reading. So again, in this article, it's just factually wrong. I mean, he's living 50 years ago. So anyway, so he continues on. Here's the problem. Professor Merrill Parvis of Harvard wrote, "The Textus Receptus, also known as the traditional text and ecclesiastical text, is not the true text of the New Testament." I would be curious when he wrote that again. He didn't cite anything here, and this is what's kind of frustrating about this article. It's the King James Bible Research Council. Cite something, right? Put a footnote in there so we can go check it out and see who wrote it and when. Those are kind of important details, right? So the King James Bible Research Council, do the research, show the work, right? In math class, right? If they gave you a big math, the teacher would give us a big math question. And if we just wrote the answer, they would just assume that we copied it from somebody else because they expected you to show the work, right? And I'm just saying it's reasonable for a group of people who call themselves the King James Bible Research Council to show their work. Where did you get that statement from? Who said it? When? What publication? What book? What article? Pick one. All right. So the Textus Receptus, the text of the church. It is that form of the text which represents the sum total and the end product of all the textual decisions which were made by the church and her fathers over a period of more than 1,000 years. All right, continuing here. I submit to you that the Textus Receptus always has been the New Testament used by the church. I mean, until recently. I mean, as much as I am a Byzantine guy and as much as I like the Textus Receptus, the church seems to be adopting, for the most part, the reasoned eclectic, the modern critical text. So this argument is kind of interesting. Anyway, my contention is clearly supported by biblical evidence recently examined by Dr. Karsten Peter Thiede. And this is where we're going to get into it. Dr. Karsten Peter Thiede, director of the Institute for Basic Epistemological Research in Paderborn, Germany. I should note that Dr. Thiede is not a TR supporter. Now, he just derided higher criticism. He just derided the scholars from Germany. So why is he going to the scholars from Germany to prove his case? All right. So he goes on to say, Dr. Thiede examined the 3 New Testament fragments, the Magdalene Papyrus donated to Magdalene College in Oxford, England, that were originally acquired in Luxor, Egypt. So there's your answer. Brother Maynard. It was acquired in Luxor, Egypt in 1901. In 1953, they were dated to about 180 to 200 AD. However, Dr. Thiede carefully redated them and placed them at 66 AD. I wasn't able to find much about this specific portion here. It's clear that Thiede did, in fact, go and redate his work to 66 AD, but I'm presuming that occurred after it was essentially rejected by the text critical community, making them the only first century New Testament fragments extant. Now, again, the claim here is that Karsten Thiede, that he did some work and analysis and came up with the date of 66 AD. Now, he goes on to say, however, this was only the beginning. Using a very technical and accurate epifluorescent confocal laser scanning microscope, right? This reminds me of, who was it? The guy with Vaticanus. Oh, what was it? I can't remember his name. I'm having a brain moment when he talks about his loop, his 16 times magnification loop. And then Nehemiah Gordon in his article talks about his really crazy, awesome equipment that he uses, right? It's like, anyway, so he uses the epifluorescent confocal laser scanning microscope. Now, I'm willing to bet that anybody who is reading that article has no idea what that is. Part of me wonders if even Dr. Brown himself knows what an epifluorescent confocal laser scanning microscope is. So I went and checked it out. And generally speaking, as simplified as it is, it allows you to basically magnify something. It's typically used in biology. But you can provide a sort of 3D-ish magnification at a really like crazy resolution. So it's magnification. It's not date testing. It's not like carbon dating or anything like that. You're not producing any results out of it. It just allows you to get a clear picture of some stuff. So based on being able to magnify it and look at a few things, apparently it gave Dr. Thiede some confidence to be exact in his dating and get a 66 AD date. Now, I'm assuming, since there's nothing else really on this, that he's in the same way using this to do his dating of the manuscript how everybody else dates it, by comparing it with other manuscripts and saying, oh, hey, it kind of looks like this manuscript from the 1st century, that kind of thing. Anyway, so it says he found that Matthew 26:22 fragment revealed the Textus Receptus reading. Okay, you don't need epifluorescent confocal laser scanning microscopes to determine if the manuscript reveals it. You don't really need that. You don't really need that. We'll take a look at the manuscript. I have it here, all zoomed in. It's good. You'll see what I mean. To be honest, it doesn't matter. Anyway, so it read. I read that as read initially. It read, or it had. Man, the number of typos in this. It had hekasotos of tone. That's a typo also. It's hekastos. There's no omicron there. Hekasotos of tone. And this is not an omicron. This is actually an omega. That should be an omega. So, the King James Bible Research Council, right? They should have used Greek characters, right? I'm assuming if they're talking about epifluorescent confocal laser scanning microscopes, and they're going into the papyrus manuscripts and making these determinations on it, that somebody at the King James Bible Research Council should know how to write Greek characters. Yeah, I'm being a little rough. Yes, I'm being a little rough on purpose, because this is frustrating. Anyway, so hekastos of tone. Every one of them, as the King James reads, as opposed to his hekastos, each one or every one of them, or one after another, again, as the critical text reads. Excuse me. All right, so the contention here is that based on epifluorescent confocal laser scanning microscopes, we have a TR reading, which is hekastos of tone, or the critical text reading, which is his hekastos of tone. By the way, they put hekastos right here and just misspelled it here. So this fragment clearly documents the antiquity of the Textus Receptus text to the time of Peter, Paul, John the Apostle, etc. Increasingly, the recension theory is being exposed for the lie that it is. All right. Again, I don't know anyone today who would say, the recension, the Lucianic recension. I don't know anyone today who would say that. So again, this research is about 50 years behind. The fragment. So just to summarize this article really quick, we'll take a look at it closely at some of the claims in a moment here. But the two big claims coming out of this article are, one, that Peter Thiede's work is amazing and we should all take it as gospel, and he dates the manuscript well within the time of the apostles to 66 AD specifically. At least the 1st century. And then the second claim is that the reading of his hekastos, which is the critical text reading, is actually not in this manuscript. And so those are the two claims that we're going to take a look at today. So let's pop over to the comments, and then we'll go from there. So we've got, all right, here we go. Heaven Jones disagreeing with me. I saw somebody else pop in there, Lost Hylian. New King James is abridged Bible. That's the one. Do people think that they want people to move away from the New King James Version? Pretty sure they'd want repeat customers. Do people think they want people to move away from the New King James Version? Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't subscribe to that. I mean, obviously a publisher is out to make money, but I don't think they're going to these crazy means to do it. Anyway, all right, so abridged to what exactly? CT Bibles. Ooh, CT Bibles. I love the NKJV. I am going to disagree with you. Yes, heaven's going to disagree with me. I engage in the same kind of textual criticism. I just come to the opposite conclusion. Reason eclecticism doesn't deny the Holy Spirit or preservation. It's a debate about what the Spirit does and what preservation. That, you know, you're right. That's probably a more accurate way to say it. It's just when I look at how it's presented. Who was I talking to? He wrote the Handbook of Preservation. The name's not coming to my mind. But there seems to be this sort of what's the term? How God interacts with people. There's a specific way he interacts with people, and then there's this general way. And preservation is often given to this general way that God interacts with people. It's late. Okay, I was up early. Somebody's going to put that in the comments. They're going to know exactly what I mean. So the Textus Receptus is a recension from 1560. Actually, that is very true. I never thought of it that way, but that is very true, that the Textus Receptus is itself a recension. Yes, one can do reasoned eclecticism without being a believer, but you can do it as a believer. Yeah, I agree with that. Where it gets interesting, though, is the question becomes how do your presuppositions and your bias impact how you do textual criticism? Because Bart Ehrman, for example, right? Everybody knows he's not a believer. He's been rather influential in text critical circles and so on and so forth. He wrote a whole book about orthodox corruption of scriptures. Why? Because his presuppositions allows him to say, hey, the whole Bible has been changed from the start, and it's been a theological, doctrinal race to see who could get the best, right? That's the gist of the orthodox corruption of scriptures. And if he had a believing attitude, I don't think he would have came out with the same kind of research. I think it would have went a different direction. So the presuppositions do impact how you view certain decisions and certain factors involved in textual criticism. There we go. All right, so RR says, I also read the ESV because of Michael Heiser, Unseen Realm, and Tim Mackey, Bible Project. They should cite their sources for sure. Yeah, definitely. Again, there's no reason to be scared of, Bibles from the critical methodologies or reasoned eclecticism, CBGM, pick whatever, however you want to say it. No reason to be scared of them. Like if you have a critical text Bible, read it. I mean, it's going to do a lot worse if it just stays on your shelf and it's all dusted up and you're not doing anything with it. All right. Oh my, the proofreading or a lack thereof. That's right. Marvo Parvis seemed to be writing back in the 50s or thereabouts. Yeah, I think that was what he put in 1957. I think it was the date he put on there. Oh my, the proofreading or lack thereof. Yeah, it's not just proofreading. I think if somebody had if they had some sort of what's the term, like peer review, I think that would be exceptionally helpful for the King James Bible Research Council. Now, I'm not on here saying, get rid of the King James Bible Research Council, blah, 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 blah. I think King James Bible believers can do good research, and I know a couple, right? Christopher Yetzer, Nick Sayers, Brian Ross. Those are the three that I mention all the time, but they do good research. You may not agree with their conclusions, but their research is spot on. So there's no reason why they can't have somebody validate their articles before they post them. Right? Because all this is going to do is embarrass the King James Bible Research Council and frustrate those of us who read it knowing that there's way more than they actually touched on in the article. All right. Hey, the Titan Disaster Report had typos. What's the Titan Disaster Report? I don't even know what that is. but yeah, I get what you're saying. All right. Brother Maynard, Dwayne, can you talk about the implications, if any, of both readings? There are none. Let's be real. The difference between each one of them or each of them, or one after another. I mean, it really. I don't know anybody who's going to change their doctrine based on that. Like this is just one of those readings that we're just simply fighting about. Just because, right? Just because a group of people claim that the King James Version is it, and the Textus Receptus is in here. But the biggest reason why we're talking about this reading is because it shows the lack of research that's going into some of the King James Bible Research Council's work, especially when it comes down to the papyrus stuff. Like even in the last one, I think it was the P52 one, there was some very or was it the New King James one? I can't remember. There were some very questionable things that he was saying, even about the Greek grammar behind certain words and phrases. So again, if somebody is on the King James Bible Research Council doing some vetting and validating some work and things of that nature, I think this would go a lot better for them. Anyway, that would be my what do you call it? My advice to the King James Bible Research Council, or at least maybe somebody to offer them feedback after something's posted and then they can change it. So this has been up since 2017. Like that's 8 years, I think, and it's like almost at the top of their list. All right, general providence. That's special providence. That's what you're talking about, Lost Helion. Thank you. All right, I can't believe they didn't proofread what sloppiness. Dwayne, you talk about the implicate. Yeah, that's right. All right. Richard Brash. That's it. You got it. It was Richard Brash. Thank you guys. Ordinary versus extraordinary providence. Yeah, same thing. General or special providence. That's right. So I would see this is the thing is I'm still kind of developing my view of preservation. But when you say ordinary providence, to me, it just looks like God sitting back and just kind of letting things go and just not letting it go too far. But when it's extraordinary providence, I see that as his hand coming, his hand seeing through that more directly. And I don't see, again, maybe I'm wrong, right? But I just don't see God with his hands back on his word. I just don't see that. And again, you're probably going to disagree with my what do you call it? My description of that. But anyway, we'll keep going here. No disagreement on the role of presuppositions. Awesome. Elect Standard Version. I'm not a Calvinist. Me neither. Heaven Jones says, yes, Yetzer Ross, and to an extent Sayers are the KJB Research Collective. There you go. Good advice from Dwayne to the Research Council. There we go. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at the reading. I didn't put this in here, did I? There we go. We'll pop it up here because I should have it. So it's Matthew 26:22. Now, this is the passage in question. I don't know if I can make that bigger. It's really big on the NASB, but in the New King James Version, excuse me, in the New King James Version, we have here in chapter 26:21. Now, as they were eating, he said, "Assuredly, I say to you, one of you will betray me." And they were exceedingly sorrowful, and each of them, right? That's not his hekastos, that's just hekastos. Each of them, hekastos avto, began to say to him, "Lord, is it I?" Right? And so the question, what's interesting about this, is the real question is going to be this entire phrase, hekastos avto. Ipendavton, is it miti ego imi. That's it. Yeah, miti ego imi. I can't talk. But this is the phrase in question. So this entire phrase, and what's interesting is it's the conjunction between here that is going to cause all of this discussion thing, right? It's one. It really is. It really comes down to one letter in P64, which could change how this goes. But even if it goes one way, it's not exactly explicit. Like there's still some wiggle room in there. So again, we're going to take a look at that. But this is the reading that we're talking about here. So it's the each of them, and each of them began to say to him. But then in the New American Standard Bible, this is the 95. Again, I like the 95. It tends to keep all of the all of the readings that are larger, but it square brackets them, so you can just ignore the square brackets, and you have generally pretty good text. So this one here. As they were eating, he said, "Truly I say to you that one of you will betray me." Being deeply grieved, they each one began to say to him, "Surely not I, Lord." Again, that comes off weird. That just sounds weird the way they translated. They each one began to say to him, and this one here has one after another. So again, that's the difference between having the his, which is basically the word one, his versus not having it. They each one, or they began. Like it's not a huge deal, but it does help in this discussion. All right, so that's the passage we're talking about. Now this is the manuscript here. Now what's interesting about this manuscript is this is P64/P67. So you can see here, there's a lot more to it. Now, I'm not signed in, which is why I'm using the INTF site, which means that this is generally publicly available for viewing. So I can show this to you. And why I want to show it here is because this is the clearest image of the manuscript of Matthew 26:22 of P64. And this is just a really tiny fragment. If we scroll out here, you can see that this is 1 centimeter. Okay, for you Americans, this is less than half an inch. And so this little piece of manuscript is less than an inch. It's tiny. It's like a postage size stamp, right? And where all of the debate is surrounding is this blotch of text right here, which you can barely read. You can barely see, barely understand what's happening there. This is where it's all going down. This little blotch right here. So this here, it's essentially understood that everybody sees this as an omega. This is an omega. This is a tav, probably, and it's going to be av to. And the question is whether this here is a nu or a mu. That's the real question. We don't know whether this is a nu or a mu. Now, where it gets even more interesting is when you start looking at people who have transcribed, right? Who have basically taken this papyrus manuscript and tried to determine what it is. So in this example here, right, this is the INTF's website. I don't know if I can make that any bigger. I can't make that bigger. I just messed it up. They tend to go with this being a mu. So what they have is a textual variant here, lagin av to. And what's interesting is I've got Swanson's work here. And Swanson actually does not have this specific textual variant in there. I did not find this variant in the Nestle Aland 28th edition or in any of my other editions here. So the question is this, is INTF doing what what's the term? What I accused the King James Bible Research Council of doing with P52, right? If you go back to P52, remember what I was saying about that? That in order for it to work, for P52 to support the Textus Receptus, in order for that to work, that they had to invent a textual variant. Well, it sure seems like the INTF here is inventing a textual variant in order to put this in, because lagin av to does not exist, at least as far as I can find. Now, someone may be able to find it, and if you do happen to find it, let me know. There's a lot of sources out there. Now, what's interesting here is there were two other transcriptions that I was able to get my hands on. One was Philip Comfort's. I asked a couple friends of mine who have his transcriptions, which I bought, so they're coming Friday. But he's got one. I got it up here. You know what? I'm going to have to open up a document. Hang on a second here. Let's see. Open document. There we go. Yeah, I'm done with Microsoft. I'm using OpenOffice, LibreOffice. That's it. Hang on a second. Still, I just want to be able to list these out for you because it's important that you see how these transcriptions went. You should be able to see that. So this is the transcription from INTF. So I'll just put that here. Boop. I can make that bigger. Oh no. Hey. So this is the transcription from INTF of that top line there. So what they're saying is that this little splurch here, this is a tav, this is an omega, and they're claiming this is a mu. Okay, and we'll do some comparative stuff here in a moment, but I just want you to see the transcriptions. Now I have a transcription from Thiede's article. We'll talk a bit about Thiede's article. This is more important when it comes to determining the date of the manuscript. But he's got his transcription right here. Again, this is probably going to be small for you. I got it copied here. Hang on. Yeah, there we go. Excuse me. Yeah, this is Thiede's. Oh, hey, that's too big. Or can I make this bigger? Let's see. Oh, there we go. Hang on here. Just having some technical difficulties. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so this is Thiede's transcription. We'll make these red just so that they're the same as everything else. So with Thiede, he takes the tav and the omega, but instead of the mu, he has the nu, which makes this av tone instead of av to. And that's going to be important because you'll have to see what the textual variants are for this one. And then lastly here, Swanson, again, Swanson produces one where there is only a single manuscript with this reading here that Swanson has. So Swanson's a bit better in that he's not inventing a textual variant in order to make it happen. So let me just go like this here. Now he put the whole word on the line, but I think the reality is just like Thiede's transcription, it's probably going to be more like that. Again, we're not going to make too much of an issue with that. He's probably just putting the whole word there because... Excuse me. So you have the three, I want to make these on the same line. Let me just kind of go like this. I'm just going to make it a little smaller here. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, so same here. So this is probably going to be something a little more akin to that. But again, they put the whole word there to show you that there's something strange going on here. So this, again, this is INTF. This is their transcription with lagging of to. Again, no manuscripts that I know of contain that reading. So if this is true, then this is a brand new textual variant, right? So if INTF has this, Thede's transcription, on the other hand, Thiede goes with essentially a Byzantine or a Textus Receptus reading, but there's a big but there. There's a big but there. And we'll go over that in a moment. And then tos av to miti ego is it I. Swanson's transcription here, which again has that as the mu. So let's go back to the manuscript. So that's what's kind of riding on that. So this is important. If it's a nu, if that little bit is a nu, then this makes the Textus Receptus reading plausible, but not necessarily true, okay? Because this is all we have. This is the top of the manuscript, and there's no way of knowing what's written above it. So again, if we come back to the manuscript, where did it go? If we come back to the manuscript, right, this is how the manuscript has been placed. Apparently, it's a 2-column page. How come I can't scroll that over a little more? It's a 2-column page. And it's at the very top. Now, whether this is at the very top, this is probably a general guess of where it is. I mean, you could probably do some sort of analysis, stoichiometry, I think, where you measure the distance of the letters and all that kind of stuff and figure out, get a general idea of where it goes. We did that with P52 to determine if there was nomina sacra or not. But there's no way to determine what's above that line, or on the other page if that's the top line. And that's a very important thing because the word his, which is really the one in question, doesn't occur, is not visible here, and isn't actually on here until like the previous line. So when we say, okay, this supports the Textus Receptus reading, well, maybe, because that's not the Textus Receptus reading. See, if we open up Swanson and we take a look at his work here, we do have manuscripts with hekastos av tone without the word his. So this would present a reading that is neither Textus Receptus or Byzantine or critical text. And because this is a papyrus manuscript, that could very well be the case, because the papyrus manuscripts, they have a lot of interesting readings here. Now, I'm just taking a quick look here to see where we have Hekastos of tone without his, and that would be Alexandrinus, majority text, KU, Washingtoniensis, Delta, Pi, Family 1, Manuscript 2. So they have Hekastos of tone without his. But then you have Hekaston of tone without his in Manuscript 700. And then you have it in P37. Possibly P45, but we don't really know. Lots of problems there. So again, it's not unheard of to have Hekaston of tone without his in the papyrus manuscript. Now, we could probably do a search on some more papyrus manuscripts, but I think that's sufficient to say that there's still a significant level of doubt as to whether or not this actually does support a Textus Receptus or Byzantine reading. Now, I want this to support the Byzantine reading. I would love to see another early Byzantine reading in here. But by saying P64 supports a Byzantine reading, possibly, but you're reading too much into that. And what's interesting is if you go back to this article from the King James Bible Research Council, the certainty with which he is writing on this is absolutely preposterous. There is so much more going on than just simply, oh, this one has this and this one has that. Because the word his is not visible in there and cannot be seen and cannot even really be determined. There's a chance that it may be, possibly, but given other papyrus manuscripts, it possibly not. So it's a very one-sided statement, very one-sided statement, and this is going to sound really harsh. And just like with the stuff with Dr. Thiede, we'll get into that in a moment here, but they present this as like the only option and the right option, and that's it. There's no question as to whether or not Thiede's, whether his processes that he does, whether they're even good or helpful. There's no discussion about it. They just assume that he's right. And there's a word for that, right? There's a word for that, like propaganda. When you just show the evidence that you want everybody to see and then ignore the evidence that you don't want everybody to see, that's called propaganda. And so this comes off as a propaganda piece for the King James Bible, for the King James Version onlyism. And again, I know that's harsh to say, but I'm not suggesting that they are purposely putting out propaganda. But there's a certain amount of neglect going on here when you just simply find one random guy who supports your opinion and then that's it. So there should be a little bit more going on here. Now, I hope that was clear. I know that was a little bit, what do you call that? It was a little bit off the cuff, a little hard to understand, wrap your head around what was going on there. But I hope you understand what I'm saying and how that was going along there. But what I want to do now is I want to take a quick look here at this little marking here. And what's interesting is we actually have a new right underneath it. And the question becomes as well, is this the cross of a nu, like the downstroke of a nu, and then the upstroke of a nu? Or is this the downstroke of a mu and the upstroke of a mu? So if you look at the nu directly below it, you'll see that the right hand vertical stroke goes straight up. This looks like it's leaning. And I think this is why 2 of the 3 transcriptions have a mu here, because this looks like it's leaning. I don't know if I can zoom in anymore to get a closer look. This looks like it's leaning. I don't know if you can see that. Do you see that leaning to the right? Why is that important? Because if you come over to another part of the manuscript, you can see a mu right there. Oh, I'll zoom in. It's zooming in weird. But there's the mu. See, it crosses down like the nu, and then it crosses over. It leans. It leans to the right. Look at the mu on the adjacent fragment on the same. Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. Right? There's a little bit of a delay. But yeah, so there's the mu right there, and you can see that it's to the right a little bit. It's slanted to the right. It's not straight up and down, right? Whereas the nu directly above it is clearly straight up and down. Like there's no slant off in this direction. So we can go back to our mu here, and you can see there's clearly a slant there. I mean, that's so incredibly clear that there's a slant there. So I mean, it certainly looks to me like mu is probably, this is where I would lean here, just in looking at this little bit here. Mu is probably going to be the reading there, which is interesting because then this gives us a textual variant. Not one, potentially. Let's go back. So the two options here were INTFs. Lagin of toe, again, like I said, this reading doesn't exist. Okay, we don't have any textual variants or any manuscripts with this specific textual variant. But what we do have, is tos of tone, mite ego. Sorry, this one, tos of to, mite ego. So what could be happening here? Okay, and this is total conjecture. You can decide to just get rid of it as you will. But let me get the whole phrase up here because I think this makes it a little bit more helpful. I'm going to use the TR one here. So this here, I'll just delete this. This here is the whole phrase. Leginov to ekastosov ton mite egoimi. So you'll notice that avto is here. It is quite possible that after writing avto, they just had avto in the mind and didn't put the nu on there. Okay, this is likely. And so, or maybe not likely, but possible. This is possible. And so what you have in the papyrus manuscripts is a place where they just simply didn't put the nu in there. And this would not be problematic from the perspective of not having any manuscripts with textual variants in it, because I think it was, what did we say it was? I got to check my book here again. It was P40, 22, oh, next page. It was P37. Yeah, so P37 has oh, wait a second here. Oh, I lost it. Okay, you guys are all, you're gonna have to wait a second here. I want to check this out again. This racked my brain today. It was such an interesting time of research. And the other thing that came up while I'm looking for this in the research was a discussion surrounding dating of papyrus manuscripts. And now, after some of the stuff that I've been reading in regards to this, especially when it comes down to Peter Head's article, I'm starting to have some questions about how papyrus manuscripts are dated and how reliable these methods are. So Nongbre is a name. Brent Nongbre is a name that's been coming up a lot recently in a whole bunch of totally different random places. So I'm going to have to purchase his book and get his thoughts. Now, I don't know who he is. I don't know if he's a Christian even, but a lot of people have been recommending his work. 26:22. Where is it? Matthew 26:22. East Hekastone. You know what? I'm just taking a quick look here. Both of those are invented. That's interesting. Now I'm just taking a quick look at Swanson's work, and he is by no means exhaustive. I'm going to have to take that away and look at that a little bit more, because it seems that both Swanson and the INTF, it seems like they both they both don't have any representation for that textual variant in any of the papyrus manuscripts. That's interesting to me. This one would if there was a nu there. So that's interesting. I mean, the other case here is perhaps perhaps this was, what do you call it? Perhaps the INTF's one is correct, because what may have happened was homoteleuton, where hekastos ovto was accidentally removed because ovto is similar here. Totally possible. Again, coming back to the manuscript here, a lot is riding on this, whether this is a nu or a mu. And I don't know, like when you look at that, the angle at which that appears to be going, that looks like it could very well be a mu. And that's interesting if that's the case. Let's come back over here. I wonder. Let's go like this. Let's do a little trick. Now we're in investigation mode. We're going to collect the mu here. Hey, where'd my snipper go? There it is. We're going to collect the mu. There's the mu. And we're going to bring this over. And see. Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't seem to be angled enough to be a mu, but it also is too much of an angle to be a nu. Are there any other moves on here? Let's see. Is it just the one? I think it is. Scandalistes. Any on here? No. You have to go to the other side to see. Take a look at the other side. Maybe there's a mu on the other side. But then there's no guarantee that the other side was the same scribe, but who knows? No. There's a nu, but again, the news are pretty consistent in going straight up. I guess this is why possibly some are suggesting that the mu is probably the correct character there, because this looks like a different scribe. Anyway, new, multiple moos. Where? Archivs, Acaria, Legon. Ta-ta for now. It's late here in Mexico, and I need to sign off. All right, RR, thanks for coming by. Let's see. I mean, I guess it could check something like this. Buenos nachos. Nice. Oh, that's going to take forever to load. All right. Oh, here it is. There's another move. See, that's even more angled. Look at that. That's more angled. I mean, there's a possibility it might not be a move. What is that? What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. You can take a look at here. Yeah, I mean, there it is. Yeah, no, that's definitely a mu. An obverse of same fragment, line 2 and line 5. Line 2 and line 5. Line 2 and line 5. Oh, yeah, there you go. You're right. I missed that. Yeah, that's so damaged, though. Like, everything on there is kind of messed up. But yeah, let's see. So this one, see, that doesn't seem angled so bad. You're right. Yeah. Well, that's a new. That's a new. Legon. It has to be a new. Legon. Let's see. Oh, no, it is. You're right. Okay. Yeah, there was a lot of discussion surrounding dodeca and this variant here. That was interesting. Legomenos. Okay. Legomenos. Interesting. That looks almost exactly. Let's go like this. Let's do the little screeny shot. I could get GIMP out and then do like a whole, opacity thing. Yeah, see, that looks way more like the new on the other side. Let's see. Let's zoom that in. Can I make this smaller? I should be able to. Yeah, there we go. All right, here it is. Yeah, I mean, if we were to turn that, that would almost be like, yeah, you can see that there's, oh, hey, oh yeah. You can see that like this is just exaggerated, but you can see that it's like an upward and then it comes out. Yeah, you know what? Okay, I have to do this. You guys are gonna stick with me for a second here. I'm gonna get the GIMP out, and we'll see if we can line these up nicely. The trick is gonna be getting them to be the same size because they're not from the same document. Let's see what happens here. Just give a second to load up here. Now we're getting into it. Now we're getting into it. All right, let's do a new. Yeah, we can do that. Okay, I'll just show you what I'm doing here. We're going to get the softwares out and do the tricks. So let's take a snip of this. Actually, no, we don't have to. Can we just save that? No. Let's snip. Let's take, well, let's get this as zoomed in as we can. Because this is what we're looking at right here. Snip. My computer's having a hard time here. That's funny. All right, that's good enough for me. Let's put this in GIMP. I might get a little bit of slowdown here, so just bear with me. The payoff will be really good. Hey, where did GIMP go? Did it crash? No. Okay. So we'll put that in here. And then we'll go back over. We'll grab the move from over here. Let's zoom this in as far as we can. We'll grab the moo there. You know what? Let's just grab the moo and nothing else. I don't think we need to get anything else. It's just going to make it more difficult. There we go. All right, copy. So we know for sure that that's a moo. Pretty good. Pretty good. We know that for sure that's a moo. So now if we pop him in here as well, here is what we can do. Let's zoom in. And if we take this guy, let's pop him into a zone. So we got that as the background. And then we're going to just go, we're going to make it a little bit opaque. And you know what we'll do here is let's just take the color and we'll change this just a little bit so that we can differentiate. There we go. All right. And then let's rotate this guy. Oh no. There we go. Let's see what happens. Oh, I don't know. That looks pretty good. The pen stroke's pretty consistent even. I wonder if we can, let's change the opacity on this just a little bit. Yeah, I mean that's pretty consistent. That's pretty consistent. It looks like it might be a little bigger. Yeah, I mean, oh, there we go. Yeah, that I don't know about you, but that new fits pretty good there. We can rotate it just a little more. There we go. Yeah. Let's see what happens when we go like this. Yeah, I don't know. Like that looks pretty good. I don't know if you can see me turning the layer on and off over top of it. That looks pretty good. I mean, that's amazing. I don't know. That's making a pretty good case. I think that's a moo. Yeah, it definitely seems like a moo. That's incredible. Yeah, enhance. Yeah, that's right. We'll get the whole CSI thing going on. Enhance. Uh, but I mean, that is pretty effective. We did it. We did it. I think that's a moo. Now, what we need to do, right, is we need to do the same thing with a new, right? So let's just cover our base. Let me save this document just to make sure. We'll just call this moo1. I'll just save it there, and then we'll just save a new one. And we'll call this one. Oh, my dog's barking. I don't know why he's barking, or she's barking. All right, now let's look for. Let's turn this guy off. Oh. And this time we're going to close him off, and we're going to get, actually, you know what would be better? Maybe we just start new. We'll start new. I'm going to eat all my RAM up while I'm live streaming. Let's go back to here, and we're going to do another snip. Because we have a new on the same page, it's just easier to work with. So let's zoom that in. Excuse me. Yeah, see, there's a new there. Yeah, I mean, that you can even just see that that's not going to fit. But you know what? For the sake of, like, maybe there's another new. Let's look for another new maybe that would fit. Let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Like that one's that's too wide. This one maybe. This one would be a good fit, I think. Scandalithine. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Scandalithine. Stumbling. Yeah. Of Thiede. No. That looks like it might be a new there, but that's very wide. I'm going first the scandal new. Moo 1 and Moo 2. There we go. Yeah, let's do that one. This one looks like it's probably going to be the best fit, if any. So let's snip. We'll grab this one here. Copy that. Let's just load up what we had before. All right, we'll just turn him off. Put the new on there. All right, we'll zoom in, do a few transforms, edit, layer attributes. Let's do, well, I think the last one was somewhere around there. Colors. Even saturation probably better. Oh, wrong one. Colors. Exposure, saturation. There it is. Oh, it's not quite doing what I wanted. Colors. Color temperature. That's right. We'll just make it warmer. Just so we can differentiate. We are the knights who say new. Okay. All right, we're going to have to clearly make this a little bigger. Well, let's rotate. Let's get the right rotation here first. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty close. All right, and then we'll make this bigger. Yeah, this is clearly not going to fit. I think that is not gonna, let's see. Yeah, it's not fitting. Maybe if I take let's just go like this. Let's just make that more pronounced. I don't know why it's clicking like that. There we go. Yeah, see, the crossbar is too high. Oh, maybe I got this down a little. Maybe if I put it down a little lower. Yeah, see, it's eating up this little blank section here. Yeah, I think the move fits better. Let's see. Let's go edit layer. Let's just go like that. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, I think my mouse is all messed up. Did I move that? I think I moved that. There we go. There we go. Yeah, I don't know. The bottom portion here is not quite, but he's pretty inconsistent. And then here, like it's very clear. And this new wasn't as wide as the other news. Like we've picked the best new, and it just doesn't quite fit. In my opinion, I think the move fits better. It really does. Yeah, it looks to me like the move fits better. So anyway, I won't keep you guys too long while we work that out. But that's an interesting comparison. I think that would just doing that I think would be helpful. There's a couple other tricks that I do astrophotography, and there's a way of pulling out very fine, very minute details. It involves stacking a bunch of images. Might be worth an experiment. So like when we take an astro image, you take a picture of the night sky and you take a number of exposures, and this relates. And you don't just take one exposure because the image gets really noisy, right? When you take a picture of a dark sky, it's really noisy, and so you want to get rid of the noise. And so what you do is you take like 30 or 40 3-minute exposures. So you leave the telescope out doing exposures all night. And then when you're done, what you do is you take the images and you stack them all together. Software, it just takes the average of all of the pixels in each place. And that clears up a lot of the noise and pulls out the details. And then you can stretch the image. And what I mean by stretch the image, it's a color stretch. Now, it won't work so well here because these are screen snipped. It's not raw photos. But if you take like your levels here, we'll do it on the background. I'll just show you. If you take the levels, layer, I'm totally on a tangent right now. I'm going to edit all this out and then release everything on the KJBRC separately. But you go to colors, levels, and you get these little dealios you can play with, right? And you can adjust these. And basically what you're doing is you're stretching the color domain. That's the best way that I can explain it. And so what this does is if there's any like really dim spots on there, this really like pulls those out. These are your histograms. If you're aware, these really impact how the histograms work. And so naturally, when we're working with astrophotography, right, we want our black levels to be increased. But you can see how, there's a little bit of detail here, but if I, pull this over all the way, that really stretches out the details. And there's ways you can adjust these sorts of things. And where this would be handy is if you're looking for a super faded letter, this could potentially pull that out. You can do the same thing with your color curves. Right here, right? You can adjust these down. And this doesn't look like you're doing much, but when you stack a whole bunch of them, right, you can get into those little tiny variants between color. Anyway, total nerd stuff here, and you guys aren't here to watch me manipulate images. So we'll continue on here. Let me close this down. That was an interesting exercise. Glad I did that. So that's the manuscript. Now let's come over to the comments. It's been a little while here. All right, so I'm going to switch over the screen here. And here we go. Let's pop over to the comments, see what y'all are saying here. Let's see. Oh, there are quite a few comments. You rebuked my cough. Yes, thank you. It's actually Tourette's. It's not a cough, it's Tourette's. Sorry. All right. So the KJVO people love to nitpick. Don't get me wrong. I read and memorize from the KJV, but they have taken things to an unhealthy level. I agree. I think many of them have. Heaven Jones says, I think Maurice Robinson on the role of the Holy Spirit in TC agrees with, not Brock. You said his name. I don't know why I can't remember. On Ordinary Providence. You rebuke my cough. It's Tourette's, but thank you. I think I told my funny story when I first walked into a Pentecostal church, right? I ticked and somebody was like, oh, the Holy Spirit is on you. So there's benefits to being a Pentecostal with Tourette's. I'm just saying. I mean, it's either they think it's the Holy Spirit or they think it's demonic, one or the other. But fortunately, the person thought it was the Holy Spirit. So I'll roll with that. Apparently, the Vulgate can read either way. Yeah, I didn't check the Vulgate. I didn't think it was really necessary for this part of the discussion. An inch is by definition 2.54 centimeters. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You're right. That's why I gave you a little less than. All right. It's neat that we can see the text. Yeah, it is. I think it's wonderful. Like the work that Dan Wallace is doing for the CSNTM and pulling all those images together and stuff. I think that's wonderful. The fact that we can just go on the site and see them, even INTF with some of their stuff. I mean, there's still a lot of microfiche, which is really hard to read, and the image quality is really bad. But they are getting updated images, which is beautiful. It's awesome. The fact that we can just go in and check for ourselves. KJVO can't be true because it uses the Masoretic text of the Old Testament, but it's still one of the best New Testament translations into English, although not perfect and definitely a bit outdated. Yeah. I like it, but then again, I'm old and outdated. Yeah, I like the KJV. I read it. I have it on my nightstand. I typically do my devotions and my general reading in the King James Version, but when I'm studying for, my sermon on Sunday or something, I'll use the New King James Version, then I'll check a few others. Brother Maynard says, Dwayne, is it a proper hermeneutic to say during the witch trials when the village guys said she turned me into a newt, is the joke and play on words that she used an improper hermeneutic? Brother Maynard, do you weigh as much as a duck? All right, look at the moo on the adjacent fragment. There you are. You did it. So incredibly clear. Chang squints at crib sheet meme. I don't know what that is. I don't know what the crib sheet meme is. Oh yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I got it. I guess so incredibly clear was a little bit of an understatement or an overstatement. I'll just say that. So you're right, Los Helian. I'll take that. I'll take it. All right. Bruce Marino says, in his modestly entitled book, How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth, my dear old Professor Gordon Fee argues that we should interpret the Bible like any other ancient text. Thanks and blessings. Yes and no. It was definitely a book written to a specific audience for a specific reason, but the Holy Spirit inspired it to go further. And you don't say the Holy Spirit inspired it to go further with other books. I would disagree there. But yeah, you can't just take passages willy-nilly and apply them wherever you want. You just don't do that. I would be a terrible pastor if I did that. Like I could think of some examples that would just go really bad. Like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That means I don't have to study for anything and I can just do it. I don't have to prep a sermon. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can just go and preach it. Right? That's going to end in disaster. Okay. We just are not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Okay. Get your point. All right. Multiple moves. Yes. Ta-ta for now. Thanks for stopping by, RR. I know you're probably gone. Buenos nachos. There we go. Heaven says an obverse of the same fragment line. Yeah, that's right. Okay, I don't know if that was a joke or a typo, but that was funny. They're a bit variable. Yes, they were. And that's what makes... That whole bit about being a bit variable plays into the question of whether P64 is first century or not, especially comparisons being made. Era una broma. Broma means food. I don't know what era una is. Excuse me. The way the letter is formed, it looks like the stroke is interrupted on the second stroke, not on the first. Let's see. Where is it? I don't know why the dog's barking. It was interrupted here, maybe. Yeah, I don't quite know what you're trying to say there. The way the letter is formed looks like the stroke is interrupted on the second stroke here. The second stroke would be here, not on the first. See, again, this could also just be degradation, because degradation does weird things to ink too, apparently. All right. Jew and Greek, nice. I can't believe I've never heard that one before. You'll hear some really funny stuff when Texans and Okies try to speak Espanol. Okay, there you go. Use the papyrus fibers as a rough grid reference. I missed that. Oh, yeah, you're right. I could have done that. No, I couldn't, because it was taken from different pages, different areas. That wouldn't work. That would be misleading. Yeah, I don't think that would work. I get when I was like lining up everything. I heard recently that buckaroo comes from cowboys mishearing the word vaquero. It tickles me. I don't know what I just said, but I said it. I like it. It's a moo. Enhance. Never seen anybody more dedicated to their craft than Dwayne is with manuscripts and fragments. Well, thanks, Jew and Greek. I appreciate it. Thanks, Rod. All right, I agree. It looks very consistent. Yeah. Dwayne Decker Green. Yeah, I think I've seen an article where Elijah Hickson, he did something like that when he was trying to prove a reading. I think it was like a comma thing. Maybe it wasn't. I can't remember what the article was. It was an ETC blog a little while ago. And he was changing out, adding and removing certain modifications to layers and stuff. It was really cool. Kind of like what I did here, but he did it. He changed a whole bunch of contrast and stuff. I would have to try and remember what that was, because it was really interesting. Anyway, Moo 1 and Moo 2. There we go. Douglas Moo. Romans. Here we go. All right. We are the knights who say ni. Mew and Mew 2. Nice. New, no, ni, new, no, you're not saying it properly. Oh, you said it. Oh, you said it again. Oh, you said it. Poor me. All right. It only takes 10 hours and 10 terabytes per photo. Yeah, these images, when you start layering stuff on, like when I'm doing the astrophotography and I layer my blacks, my black frames with my light frames, and I put in my what do you call them? The bias frames. Man, those images, you're talking like 900, 1 gigabyte. Like, they get huge real fast. All right. Ross Lewichuk is here. Hey, how's it going? Actually, in modern Greek, it is the knights who say ni. That's right. It is the knights who say ni. Yeah, CSNTM. Many British library manuscripts that are still unavailable can be found on CSNTM. I like Alexandrinus. Yeah, but I think Alexandrinus on CSNTM is not the actual manuscript. I think it's facsimile. I think. I mean, we can go check that out, but I remember it being very different than what I was able to see on INTF. All right. Food is comida. Broma is a joke. Oh, okay. Well, there we go. I think vroma in Greek is food. But I like jokes, and it's like food to me, so I guess that's okay. All right. Let's take a look at the second part here. So that was a little bit of a what do you call it? A bit of thrashing about, talking a little bit about whether or not this accepts a Textus receiving, whether this is a Textus Receptus reading. If this is a new, then it's quite possibly, it could be a Textus Receptus reading, though it doesn't guarantee it. Because the question is whether the word his is in there, which would appear either on the line above it. If this is the first line, it would be on the previous page. If this is a mu, on the other hand, then what we have is a textual variant that doesn't exist. Whether we have the INTF's transcription of legin avto, or whether we have Swanson's transcription, which is hekastos avto. But either way, I'm sure there's going to be lots of debate surrounding that. I'm pretty sure we didn't solve it, but we were able to overlap a few things and see that the mu seems to fit a little more. I know, again, it's not a very scientific test, but it does look right. It does appear. We didn't have what was it called? What did he call it? I forget what he called it now. I have to get it. Yeah, we didn't have an epifluorescent confocal laser scanning microscope to check and see if that's a nu or if that's a mu. But what would be interesting, even if you could zoom in and get a really, really close look at this, What is he basing that off of? I would be curious. If he used one of these microscopes, chances are he probably wrote his methodology on there. But I can't see that zooming in like that, adding anything new that we can't see already. I would be very surprised if there's anything new on there. Now, the other question here that was kind of up for grabs is whether this is a first century manuscript. Now, again, keeping in mind that this tool, this epifluorescent thing, the epifluorescent microscope, whether it was zooming in or whatever, the point of the microscope is that it's not something that can determine dates. This isn't carbon dating. It's not a tool meant to like analyze the specific chemical makeup of the ink to determine when it was written down. That's not the point of the epifluorescent microscope. So basically, what he's doing with the epifluorescent microscope is getting, better measurements of what the letters are, essentially. And so what it boils down to is that even though he has one of these microscopes, the standard procedure for dating a papyrus manuscript is still going to be in place. That is, that the style of writing on the manuscript, the style of writing on the manuscript is going to be compared with the style of writing on another manuscript, especially one that we know the date of. And so when we compare them, and if the writing is very similar, well, then we know what the date of the manuscript is. If a manuscript does not have a date on it, that's really the only way that we can go about doing it, aside from carbon dating. But carbon dating is problematic as well. It doesn't get to specific dates. Carbon dating, just like taking a look at the style of writing, right? It's going to give you a range of dates, and usually within 100 or 200 years. So carbon dating isn't really the be-all, end-all if we're talking about 100 or 200 years, right? There's a margin of error in there, which makes it not helpful when we get back into the 1st and 2nd century. So even if we could carbon date this manuscript, we wouldn't have a good probability for an exact date. Now, again, the date of 66 AD, man, that's wild to me. That somebody can take a papyrus manuscript and just give it a specific date like that. That I think should make anybody a little bit, what's the term, suspicious. So you got to understand Carson Thiede, Dr. Carson Thiede, when he produced. Well, let's kind of. I'm all over the place here, but let's start with this way. Let me pull my notes up here. I'm getting a bit lost in what I'm trying to say here. I'll give you a timeline of dates. About the discovery of P64. Now, there's some confusion about another library indexing system, whether it was Greek 17 or Greek 18, but it turns out to be Greek 17 because apparently 2 of the manuscripts were actually from the same manuscript, even though they were cataloged separately, and this became P64 and P67. So anyway, it was purchased by someone named Reverend Charles Bousfield Houlayet. I probably mispronounced that, but he purchased it in 1901 from Luxor, Egypt. And as soon as he purchased it, it was assigned a date of the 4th century by A.S. Hunt, right? Grenville and Hunt, the guys who went to Oxyrhynchus and pulled out all the papyrus manuscripts. He gave it a 4th century date. He was apparently not entirely sure whether it would be late 3rd or early 4th, but did settle on the 4th century. So a little bit later, Colin Roberts comes by, assigns it a 2nd century date. I think this was somewhere around the 50s. And this was seconded by Harold Bell, Skeat, and Turner. So if you're in the text critical circles, probably heard some of those names before. But generally, since then, the consensus has been 2nd century. Now, in 1994, this is interesting, okay? Dr. Carsten Thiede comes along, and he goes, oh, you know what? I actually think that this is a 1st century manuscript. Now, how he released this was rather interesting. So the paper where he argues for this didn't actually come out until 6 months later from his announcements. And his announcement ended up on, was it Time magazine or The Times? I think it was The Times. And so he released this on The Times in December of 1994, getting a whole bunch of headlines, gained a lot of popularity, and this kind of got out there. And now nobody could, of course, interact with this specific announcement because no documents were produced. Now I'm starting to notice, actually, just as I'm talking about this, some parallels going on. Right, this is right. Dan Wallace, man, if you're watching this, love you, brother. But I have to come back to that public announcement where Dan Wallace announced that the first century Mark, that there, in his debate with Bart Ehrman, that we now have a first century manuscript of the Gospel of Mark. There's this announcement that went out before it was really tested. And so, yeah, you have the same thing going on here where he makes this announcement, gets a bunch of publicity for it before his work had a chance to be reviewed and tested. So that goes on. 6 months later, he publishes his work. And one of the things that he published was this. I forget where it was. This is Thiede's document here. Now, we're not going to read through it. It's like, I think it's like 15 or 20 pages. And then Peter Head responds to that. I think I mixed them up here. This is Peter Head's here response. And this is Thiede's argument. So did I mix that up? I think I did. I think that was Peter's. Oh, no. I labeled it as Thiede's, but it was Peter's. Hang on here. I have to double check that now. I think I got mixed up here. Oh, no, they are Thiede's. Okay. Yeah, he was just quoting him. Okay, good. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so this is Karsten Peter's document here where he talks specifically about the P64 and how he went about dating it. Now, again, this was released later. His actual academic article on that 6 months later. Anyway, so he writes this, and in it, I'll just summarize here. His argument is basically like if you take a couple first century documents and you compare the writing in P64 with these first century documents, that the writing is so similar that we have to basically claim that it's the same. Now, I could go through the boring task of telling you, the Ida has a little line here, and sometimes it's above and below the center line, but it's just like this manuscript. But what's really great is Peter, in his article, in his response to Karsten Thiede, he provides documents, like actual pictures of the manuscripts that he's talking about. But the comparison that Dr. Thiede was making was one to the Herculaneum papyri, which are apparently first century papyrus manuscripts written in Greek. He uses the Qumran manuscripts, caves 4 and 7. There's some Old Testament writings written in Greek that he uses to compare the type of writing. And then there is another set of documents called the Nahal Hever scroll, which that's interesting because those are carbonated, not fizzy like fizzy drinks, but like they've been burned or something, and so they haven't been able to unroll them. But then I think you read a little while ago about that technology where they could scan it and do a virtual unrolling. I think it's one of those situations. But I have a link to the wiki article here. We can check that out really quickly. The Nahal Hever document, and of course you can get a gist of the type of writing that's in there. Again, he's going on to say certain letters tend to have certain features, but like the thing is if you actually compare these side by side, the writing looks nothing like just a simple glance. He's going through and doing all these like weird document stuff, but not weird document stuff, but he's doing all this analysis, but like just a quick glance shows you that the writing style is very different. Like you don't, now again, I'm not a papyrologist, right? That this isn't like, I'm not trained in this field, but you can see, you just looking with your eyes, you can see that the type of writing, the type of font being used is quite different. But again, we'll have some better images to go on. I think I'm still showing you the screen there. I could zoom in there. Yeah. We'll have some better images to go on, because you'll see. It's just wild. But yeah, so we have the Nahal Hever scroll he compared with the manuscripts from caves 4 and 7 from Qumran and their Herculaneum papyri. So Thiede's conclusion, when he talks about the date, He says this, and this is interesting. This is on page 37 of this document here. Again, the documents are in the link, so if you want to go and see Peter's document or Dr. Thiede's document, you can catch it. And I know I mean Dr. Peter Head. So anyway, so Thiede concludes on the dates. He says this: for our present purposes, we may proffer a tentative suggestion. Okay, this is Dr. Thiede's words in his article here, a tentative suggestion. The material from Nahal, Hever, Herculaneum, and Qumran could point towards a 1st century date for Magdalene Greek 17, which is essentially P64-67. So even there, he's not dogmatic on that. He's not being dogmatic. Now, I'd be curious if he's dogmatic on 66 AD. But this seems to be a place where he is speaking with less conclusivity than the article from the King James Bible Research Council. Again, there's tremendous debate about this. This isn't a settled issue. In fact, it appears to be more settled in the other direction than the King James Bible Research Council would like it to go. The other thing that's interesting about Thiede's article, when you go on and read it, he talks about the nomina sacra. Now, it's pretty clear. It's evident that P64, 67, that there is nomina sacra in that. Now, the general thinking is that when you start getting into the earliest of the earliest, that there may not be nomina sacra. Now, again, there's still big questions surrounding that. Nobody knows when the nomina sacra has entered into the textual tradition. But generally speaking, as far back as manuscripts we have is as far back as we see nomina sacra. So nomina sacra can't really be used to date much of anything. It would be interesting if it didn't have nomina sacra, but because it's just a tiny little fragment, doesn't mean there's none elsewhere. But anyway, so he points this. Thiede takes it a step further, and because he seems to think that this is 1st century, to see nomina sacra in the 1st century, according to Thiede, means to him that there was incredible Christology right off the start. I mean, that could very well be the case. But you see, he's using his tentative suggestion to make tentative conclusions about nomina sacra. Anyway, that's just an interesting bonus thought on that. But again, the point here is that he's proffering this tentative suggestion that P64 matches Nahal, Hever, Herculaneum, and Qumran, and that we should consider it a 1st century manuscript. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So Peter Head makes a response. Where is that? Right here. I have the PDF document. Oh, cookies. Deny. I always deny cookies. That's how I roll. All right. So some of the... I'll just give you some of the highlights to Peter's article, and then we'll take a look at some of the pictures that he produces. Because if you're not sold that P64 does not match these other manuscripts, then just seeing the pictures, I think will sell it for you. But he goes, so the first thing here, the steadily increasing numbers of the New Testament manuscripts on papyrus and the confident allocation of dates by various handbooks can obscure the fact that we have no absolutely secure dates for any New Testament manuscript on papyrus. Now, this is a big deal. This is a big deal. All the dates that we have for the New Testament papyrus are all tentative. They're all tentative. Every single one of them. There is not one which we can say we have absolutely a secure date. We have absolute certainty that this papyrus manuscript was written in this century. We don't know. And that's an interesting fact. So I want to dive a little deeper into that. And again, like I was saying, the name Nongbre, Brent Nongbre kept coming up, and he has written a book, which I want to take a look at. But he is apparently arguing that the way in which papyrus manuscripts are dated is exceptionally subjective. I got a quote from Brent Nongbre. I pulled this up on Bart Ehrman's blog, of all people. So I think this is giving me an idea of where Brent Nongbre is in regards to Christianity. But anyway, with that aside, Brent Nongbre, he says this in a post on Bart Ehrman's blog. He says, paleography, the analysis of handwriting, is, for better or worse, the main way that we assign dates to undated ancient manuscripts. This method can work reasonably well when you have lots of example with exact dates. You can make informed comparisons of undated samples of handwriting with dated samples. Unfortunately, securely dated samples of literary Greek handwriting of the Roman era are not as numerous as we would like. Competent paleographers thus hesitate to give highly specific dates, usually allowing at least a 50-year window. So, based on what Brent Nongbury is saying, if Dr. Thiede's thinking 66 AD, you have to give 50 on either side. Given that Matthew was probably not written in 16 AD, you're probably going to weigh that on the other end. But anyway, a specific year is out of the question, according to Brent Nongbury. Actually, I have the link to that. Second, similarities in writing style were unsurprisingly passed from teacher to student and thus persisted for multiple generations. So what he's suggesting here is that writing styles may extend into multiple generations. A teacher teaches a student how to write, and they take on their hand, right? And then he says, and finally, ancient scribes were perfectly capable of writing in different styles that we associate with different time periods. And then he apparently has an article explaining that. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about people. Scribes are people. they're going to do things in specific ways and maybe not in specific ways, right? Anyway, so continuing on, that kind of a sidetrack here. So Dr. Peter Head, on the other hand, suggests that legal documents had specific writing style. So this comes down to the comparison. So when P64 is compared with other documents, if you're using a legal document, for example, apparently, according to Dr. Head, they would have been written in a specific style rather than like a narrative or a story or something. So a comparison between something like that isn't necessarily going to work. He says, while documentary papyri such as private letters or receipts often contained a date, which is what we want if we're doing a comparison, there were fairly strict distinctions made between writing styles used for documentary purposes and those appropriate for literary works. So in other words, if you're hiring a lawyer to write up a contract about purchasing sheep from your neighbor, he's going to use a very specific style for that purpose, as opposed to a literary work being done, which would have its own style. So that's what Dr. Head appears to be suggesting. The other argument that Dr. Head brings against Thiede's suggestion here is that he had completely ignored all the current scholarship and never interacted with it. It will also be clear that Thiede has not refuted or even given attention to either the arguments of these scholars or the manuscripts to which they appealed. So Thiede didn't interact with the scholarly community on P64 and its date. Again, Thiede's work appeared in the Times in 1994, and the published paper wasn't available until some time after the publicity. It was only after some of the initial hubbub had died down that Thiede's scholarly article became available. Again, quoting Head in his article. And then lastly here, Head determines Thiede's actual quote in a correspondence to a writer to the paper, and this is where it gets interesting. Okay, so you got to understand, we didn't have bulletin boards. They didn't have bulletin boards. Well, maybe they did. This would have been like late 90s. But letters to the editors and stuff like that, right? So this is kind of like what's going on here. So Dr. Thiede had apparently responded to a question from a letter to the editor type thing, and said, I do not give a precise date, even though 66 AD, I got to find out about what's going on with that 66 AD. I do not give a precise date, but suggest a date in the last third of the first century. The starting point is the middle of the century. I allow for a variation of circa 20 years plus one. Plus one? That's weird. And then opt for the later end, soon after AD 70. So he's contradicting himself there. Anyway, here's my point. This seems a little bit more rambly than many of my other videos, but here's the point that I'm trying to get across here, is the way in which the King James Bible Research Council is presenting this information is as though there is no other sides to the question. The way it's presented is, this guy found P64 to be first century. Cool. It supports the King James Bible. Let's go with it. It supports the Textus Receptus. Let's go with it. And just like Thiede, who didn't interact with any of the scholars of the day, the King James Bible Research Council is not interacting with the other sides of this argument, and they are just presenting the one side of the discussion, which is probably more than likely wrong. So, again, it's the same thing with the question of, does this support the Textus Receptus? Maybe, maybe not, right? They present this as oh yes, it absolutely does. But the reality is there is so much uncertainty because the papyrus P64 is so bundled up there. It's so messed up there. It's so lacunous. And to determine whether that's a mu or a nu, we did our little scientific experiment there. I mean, it seems to match the mu more than it seems to match the nu. But again, this is the side of the discussion that you're not getting from the King James Bible Research Council, right? They should be aware that there are these discussions surrounding whether that's a mu or a nu. If they were doing their research, they would have seen that, the scholarly consensus is actually against what Dr. Thiede has been proffering, and nobody has really taken his work seriously. Again, could Dr. Thiede be right? Possibly. Could that be a nu there? Possibly. But more than likely, probably not. Again, I know this was a little bit more rough to say it this way, but when you present the evidence in a one-sided way, just like the King James Bible Research Council did here on this specific article, right, it comes off as propaganda rather than actual scholarly material. Anyway, that's one of the things there. I probably could have did a little bit of a better job today on this live stream, but I'm finally back. I was away for a couple weeks at family camp, enjoying some time with the family and with some friends up there on Manitoulin Island. Great place to be. But yeah, I wanted to take a quick look at this. There was one more claim that Dr. David Brown made about a certain papyrus manuscript. I can't remember which one it was. It was in the same video where he talked about P52. I think it was maybe P31 or P34. Can't remember now. But apparently that supposedly has a Textus Receptus reading. Now, so we'll have to take a look at that and see. Again, I'm not opposed to it being, if it's a Textus Receptus reading, by the way, it's probably a Byzantine reading, not a Textus Receptus reading. It's from our perspectives. Then that's great. I think that's awesome. But given what we're seeing with these one-sided discussions coming out of the King James Bible Research Council, I don't know. I have my doubts. We'll see. We will see. Anyway, my advice to the King James Bible Research Council is vet your work. And if you're taking a minority opinion, or you're taking the opinion of one guy, Dr. Thiede, you should express that this goes against the consensus, at the very least, and put footnotes in your work, for crying out loud. Put footnotes in there. I can't tell what you're looking at. All right, let's take a look at some of the comments here. A bit of a different live stream today. What do we got going on here? Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Coming up here. All right. We talked about that stuff. Mu 1 and Mu 2. It only takes 10 hours and 10 terabytes per photo. All right. CSNTM. All right. Okay. Dwayne, you should go to the Dakotas on a vacation with the family. The stars seem close enough that you could reach up and grab one. I'm sure it'd make for some great photos. Probably, but here's the thing. Okay, where I live, I'm on the Bruce Peninsula. We are a sky sanctuary. So that means that the little hamlets around, they are mandated by municipal code to keep the light pollution out of the skies. And we have like Bortle Class 2 skies here. So like it really doesn't get much better than that. I think you have to go to like the middle of the desert in Arizona in order to get skies better than that. So like we're in a pretty prime location. So anyway, but yeah, Dakota, I'm sure it sounds like a great place to be. All right, you can take amazing space photos with a smartphone with a similar technique Dwayne described. It'd probably work amazing out there. Yeah, probably. I don't know if the smartphone would take amazing photos. One of these days I'm gonna have to show some of the images that I'm getting, but they're they're literally hours and hours. I have a photo of the Andromeda Galaxy in which I have close to 40 hours of exposure on that. So you're not going to get that out of a smartphone. Anyway, I spent a lot of money on that rig. So, okay. The microscope was so powerful it could read the missing line above. Nice. All right. The Codex Canada CS is sweet. They used maple syrup for ink. Har har har. There we go. All right. Well, it's 11:15. It's been a bit of a late one. So anyway, I think we're gonna end here. Thanks a lot for coming on the live stream, guys. Keep an eye out. I'm hoping to have another live stream next week, and then the week after, I'm not sure if I'm going to be here on Wednesday, so we'll see how things go. But yeah, do keep an eye out. I got a few things planned. I don't know if Rod is still in here at Jew and Greek, but I'll be talking to him on Friday about a couple things textual critical related, and that will be fun. So if you can, Friday, I think at 9, I think that's when he does his live stream, so we'll be there. On his channel, come join us. And then I have some more stuff coming up with Brian Ross. So we're going to be chatting up a few things there. So that's it. So guys, have a good one. We'll see you around, brothers and sisters. And until next time, we'll see you around.